Rain or shine, it's always a flip of the dice. Hello again, rail fans, and welcome to a video that's sort of a compilation of trains that we've caught in various occasions, some by accident and some planned for. Railfanning is a hobby of mostly luck. Sometimes you can plan an outing just right, and sometimes you sit at a hotspot and see little to no trains. In the recent months, luck hasn't always been on our side. So enjoy this handful of videos of trains, locations, and some random things along the way. Let's start out close to home on the CSX's Brooksville subdivision in Lutz, Florida. Hearing 0728 leaving Tampa earlier than usual at an uncommon 6 p.m. on a Tuesday, we drift our way to the tracks. I'm set up about a mile from the McDonald's in front of the Lutz Library. A replica of Seaboard's Lutz Junction platform and office is in the foreground on the right, with the Brooksville sub running parallel only 50 feet away. On those railroad tracks, 0728 is coming north out of Tampa, light engines, towards Brooksville. An interesting sight at best. This Jeep 40-2 would be heading up to Cemex's plant to pick up 62 coal empties from the coal loop. Yes, contrary to popular belief, Cemex's Brooksville plant still uses coal to generate energy for who knows what. Nevertheless, CSX's 10 to 15 car shipments on locals are slowly compiled into a quasi-unit train. When Cemex has unloaded the train, a local like this will come up and bring the empties back to Tampa, where they'll slowly head north on multiple Q442s. Exactly 1 week later, my brother and I have made the short return to the tracks. From the looks of the sky, this sunset shot would be also well lit. Arriving at the depot, we'd only have minutes to set up before 0728 would cruise through town. Now, I knew the leader would have a nice horn and set up my camera shot for an intro-style shot. But much to our surprise and disappointment, 0728 was once again light engine. With an ES40 DC, a friendly crew, and a raised letter K5LA horn salute, 0728 was through Lutz. No point in chasing this guy, so we left for home. I was a little confuddled with this movement, as I knew there weren't any more coal empties in Brooksville. So why was CSX sending a lone 4,000 horsepower beast up the sub? Well, after some digging around, I found out that Cemex needed to pull a number of cement cars out of storage from Hammock Yard and into the plant. Cemex's 23-ton industrial switcher, similar to the one used in Port Red Wing and Owens Corning in Lakeland, wasn't able of pulling such a load. A few days after this video was taken, my friend Mr. Hollandaise photographed 5337 sitting quietly in Brooksville. The following Sunday job would end up taking this locomotive back to Tampa. A few weeks before, Cemex was still accumulating its unit train size cut of coal cars for the month of April, and on Thursday, April 28th, we made the drive to McDonald's for the catch. This time, 0728 would be transporting a normal Thursday cut of cars from Tampa, including 8 cars of loaded coal. Behind those would be a cut of cement hoppers, all being pulled by a Jeep 40-3, number 6520. Tonight, 0728 would be in a hurry. Going on duty at 1700, the train departed Tampa at time 2000 or 8 p.m., making it here to Lutz right at 9:30 p.m. In conclusion, the crew of this 0728 returned south with 21 cars arriving in Tampa just before 4 a.m. That's the railroad, an almost 12-hour shift spanning throughout the night, switching customers in the dark of rural forests of Brooksville. About 3 weeks after this 0728 was shot, we found ourselves along the Tampa Terminal sub in Palmacia, Florida. After a baseball tournament that ended up being right next to the old port trackage, we would look around for Y295 in the last lights of day. He'd drop his 4 boxcars on the main while he ran engines light down the Rattlesnake Industrial Spur track. I've never seen a train on this stretch of track before, so it was nice to chase the Jeep 38-3 through the garden of condos and bayside housing that is South Tampa. With real estate in the area booming, this small spur is on borrowed time. Y295, the Sunday through Thursday Old Port switcher, still switches two customers here, those being cargo sweeteners and chemical formulators. Both industries receive tank cars, with the latter of the two getting white tankers to symbolize the chemicals within. Cargo gets black tanks every few days, and tonight Y295 would be pulling out a cut of 4 tanks to take back to Tampa. But we couldn't stay for the switching, however, as after the tournament we were hungry, and 45 minutes of highway still lay between us and home. The next day, my family and I would be back in the Tampa area to try an authentic restaurant in downtown Ybor City that specializes in homemade crepes. We'd be here for lunch to celebrate the end of the school year, but as any rail fan would do, I checked for trains in the area. 1 block from the restaurant sat the A line into Tampa Union Station, and the line to the Old Port where we saw Y295 the night before. I knew 91 would be arriving in Tampa around the time we'd eat, so I packed up the camera gear and soon would have to set it up. I was ready and waiting in the grassy area next to East 6th Street when PO 91 approached, with a very nice surprise trailing third. Yes, I did know about this consist the day before, but after missing Amtrak's Dash 8s multiple times on the Silver Star service, today would finally yield success. Amtrak 515 is a GE B32-8WH built in 1991 along with 19 other prototypes. The 4-axle road switcher can generate 3,200 horsepower, with the W standing for wide cab and H for head-end power. The locomotive is part of GE's successful Dash 8 series of engines from the 90s, with this unit being capable of reaching speeds of 100 miles per hour. Coming out of Tampa, what rail fans have nicknamed the Superstar departs TUS. In January of 2022, Amtrak suspended their Silver Meteor service, trains 97 and 98, to cut costs and relieve delays caused from crew shortages. The result has been a very long Silver Star train. In 2020, these trains would be 8 cars at most, but now, like today, it's not uncommon to see 12 to 15 car trains. It almost makes it look like Amtrak's ridership is increasing. We won't talk about that. It would only be a few minutes until the hour-late PO91 would emerge from Tampa, but not without leaving a dump of smoke next to the Ybor parking garage. Superstar indeed. With 91 gone into the southbound wind, on to our next outing, a solid 6 days later. With another daylight 0728 coming north out of Tampa, I decided to go to the Lutz depot one more time to try and snag an intro shot with 728 pulling an actual train. And I got what I wanted, just with one minor problem. Yeah, what seemed to be a perfect filming opportunity quickly turned into a frantic attempt to keep my camera dry. So, through the absolute pouring rain, here's 0728 heading to Brooksville. Today, actually making CSX some money. By the time 0728 was passed, I was anything but dry, so I packed up and headed for home. The very next day, our family drove 3.5 hours to Jacksonville to tour the University of North Florida. The tour was great, and I realized how beautiful it was, hidden away in pine forest, and the campus-wide lush landscaping was incredible. But probably the best part about it all was its proximity to the plethora of railroads. A 13-minute drive west brought us to the south end of Florida East Coast's Bowden Yard. And the moment we showed up, FEC's Job 70 approached northbound, passing an intermodal train on the main. FEC 510 is an EMD Jeep 38-2 built for FEC in April of 1978. The unit sports FEC's Hurricane scheme, one of only 3 units that still wear it. In the 1980s, all FEC general-purpose locomotives had this scheme, but slowly over time, the new shades of dark blue have covered the Hurricane logo and what rail fans call the candy cane stripes seen on the long hood of 510. Many thanks to local rail fan James Lee for that info. We're at Control Point Sunbeam along Henry Flagler's 351-mile Florida East Coast Railroad. The old searchlight signals caught my eye. Only a handful of years ago, signals all around Central Florida, mostly around the Lakeland area, were just like these. Signals of past eras like the SEL days for CSX and CFL. Underneath the signal head, the post holds a variety of signs. From top to bottom, the black Begin CTC sign tells train crews to begin centralized traffic control, which I believe means this begins dispatcher control territory, but I'm not sure. Further below, the Begin ATC sign tells us that here, trains are also to commence the usage of automatic train control. Finally, the End Automatic Block sign tells crew that the upcoming territory doesn't include block signaling and merely signals that indicate speeds and incoming obstructions. A 180-degree swing to the north, and we can see an FEC crew climb out of railroad's call a crew bus and into the lead locomotive. Our southbound is FEC 107, a daily Bowden to Miami intermodal that briefly works Port Everglades and Fort Lauderdale, getting ready to depart Jacksonville around 6 p.m. this day. To a CSX rail fan like myself, the FEC's champion scheme is always cool to see, along with the liquefied natural gas tender between the two GEVOs. A third GE would be hitching a ride south on 107, presumably a power move between engine shops.
Train 107, Bowden Yard over. Bowden. Yes, sir, we're ready to depart.
107, you got permission to continue south by the Sunbeam. It's your train.
Continue south, appreciate it. 107 now. Ready to depart off the east side. Over.
Copy that, 823 coming off the east tonight. You proceed south on signal indication.
With the Bowden Yardmaster and dispatcher giving 107 permission to depart, we'd set up our cameras to watch this 8,000-foot intermodal beast blast off with high-priority freight and trail. Containers, trailers, and some crude-looking truckloads would make up today's 107. He'd quickly be gaining speed and head into the southbound Sunset. For From here, it was only a few minutes to a delicious dinner location called Domo, a ramen restaurant that specializes in traditional Asian soups, appetizers, and desserts, all with a modern flair. We ordered some barbecue kimchi wings, spiced potatoes, and of course, ramen. The meal ended with a sample of their matcha green tea soft serve ice cream, which wrapped up the incredibly flavorful dinner. The next morning, my dad and I would leave the rest of the family in the hotel to mosey around downtown Jacksonville for some trains. Unfortunately, this Saturday morning would be the slowest I've ever seen, with about one train an hour. The short outing would start along the Sanford sub just south of Beaver Street. Amtrak 53 would be almost an hour late this morning, making it through downtown Jacks around 8 a.m. It's always a treat to see Auto Train, especially a long one with a friendly crew. The residential areas of South Jacks would be waken up by the happy horn of PO 53. Still about an hour and a half north of his terminus in Sanford, the southbound Auto Train would be a nice way to start the outing. With just over 30 cars drifting south, we'd leave northbound around the corner to McQuaid Street. A northbound NS transfer job would be crossing, and because of some perfectly timed traffic lights, we couldn't beat them to Old Kings Road. A shot of this NS-9 shuffling container traffic would have to do for now. About 90 minutes later, NS-226 would depart for the FEC southbound with a really sharp EMD SD70 ACC on point. With a mixture of FD70s to build the cab and flat body all the way to the long hood, these are some good looking engines, especially in the infamous black and white horsehead scheme. A yard job would run parallel to 226, also switching to time-sensitive traffic. About a half hour earlier, we caught IO-32. He had come south from Duval after dropping IO-31's consist and ran light engines to Moncrief. A quick inspection and a refueling would take about 30 minutes, but soon the small old dwarf signal would show a green for 32 to depart. IO-32 would then turn west onto the Honeymoon Y and re-enter Duval via the south end. Unfortunately, our time in Jacksonville was now up, so we picked up the family from the hotel and decided to drive across the state to Stark instead of going I-10 to Baldwin. We'd end up stopping in the small town of Green Cove Springs. Here the CSX-A line passes through, but we were here for lunch and the beautiful St. Johns River. This is where our month of railfanning would end, a small Florida town en route to home. I hope you've enjoyed this long compilation of videos, and I also hope you've learned something new along the way. But until we meet again somewhere trackside, this is Christian from Multicolor Films. End of transmission.